With the Ukraine war dragging on and world powers in dispute, a question arises on the horizon. Could Europe send peacekeeping forces to stabilize the region? The answer might surprise you in this video. There, I will tackle this with the north of war. Many European countries suggest the possibility of sending peacekeeping troops to mediate the Ukraine conflict. But there are a number of obstacles to this whole issue, and that's what we will address in today's video. The truth is that the presence of peacekeeping forces could change the course of the war because Europe openly antagonizes Russia. So, nothing prevents these peacekeeping troops from suddenly becoming hostile to Russia. We would have the embryo of a third world war. However, as there is much disagreement among European countries, we begin to see a certain fragility in the European Union, with possible unfavorable developments for this union and NATO in the future, in addition to dependence on the United States. Well, let's talk case by case. 4 players that I see as important in Europe. Let's talk first about the United Kingdom. I have already made several videos in the last 15 days discussing the problem of the British Navy. They have more admirals than combat ships. The army has issues too. They have practically the same number of tanks and generals. That's the truth. It's an army with too many chiefs and not enough Indians. The British Air Force is not in a position to face the Russian Air Force for several reasons, mainly the technological condition of Russia, which is better. We have to rely on one thing. If the Navy and Army of the United Kingdom are not doing well, it's not possible for the Air Force to be much better than that. So that's one player. The second player I will talk about is Germany. Look, Germany has been decapitalizing its armed forces, emasculating its army, which used to be very good, one of the best armies during the NATO era, the West German Army, from the Cold War era. It was highly respected by the Soviets, but today it's a shadow of that. Besides the fact that Germany sent part of its equipment to the war in Ukraine. They are not in a position, the truth is, to attempt a massive military presence. They might even send troops, but they wouldn't have the material, besides the internal disagreements within the German government itself. In the other case, it's France. France has been taking advantage of this war to get rid of all its unusable material, especially the Mirage 2000 jets, which were just taking up space in France's hangars and were very costly to maintain. The French army, in terms of equipment, is a bit better than the German and British ones because they have good factories. That's the big truth. But it is not an army, by its very nature, that would be able to stand against Russia. And Macron knows this. He is aware of these problems. Technically, French material is inferior to Russian material. This has already been proven in the Ukraine war, with issues with the Caesar and other problems with French equipment. So I find it very difficult for France to achieve this as well. They can't even agree on the doctrine of a potential European army that doesn't depend on the United States. The fourth important player in NATO would be Turkey, but Turkey is unlikely to get on board with this. They have a reasonable relationship with Russia. They make a lot of money from this war. They won't risk everything because of a spat between European countries and Russia. So what happens? We have to remember the background. There are other armies, like Spain and Italy, but I won't even take them into consideration. I won't even consider that. Because, for one thing, these countries could come together, form a multinational force, and maintain it for some time. But would they be able to replace all that? What would be the problems, language, etc.? Another thing, a peacekeeping force in Ukraine would be about 50,000 men, maybe more. Europe is not in a position today to raise that. And we need to remember that NATO's previous missions were not very good. Afghanistan is there to prove it. NATO does not currently have an operational employment doctrine to confront Russia. Then you say, but a peacekeeping force doesn't imply that. It's more of a policing force. But if Europe sends troops to Ukraine, that's not its intention. The intention is to confront Russia. And then the developments will be quite complicated.
E aí os desdobramentos vão ser bastante complicados. Há problema logístico também, problema logístico muito sério.
There is also a logistical problem, a very serious logistical problem, because the European defense industry is not managing to meet the commitments of the Ukrainian army. That's the truth. It is a financialized industry with serious supply issues for raw materials, heavily dependent on China. So that's another serious problem as well. Now we have to remember one thing. For example, I saw Europe trying to create patrols or a no-fly zone the other day. Look, folks, Russia is not Iraq. If you created a no-fly zone in Iraq, you need Russia. They don't have the equipment to respond to that. Russia does. Put it down there. It already intercepted Jet 735, shot down everything Ukraine put in the air. So it wouldn't be a walk in the park. People would have to think twice. I think like this. Do you want to try a military adventure? The framing you have, the view you have of the fact, before things are put on the battlefield, seeing a response is one thing. After things start happening, you begin to see that things aren't quite like that. The Germans felt this when they invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. At first, they thought it was a walk in the park. 3 months later, they were already changing their minds. Right? So that's the situation we have today. Europe also doesn't have the money for that. If the United States withdraws the financial support from NATO, it will collapse. That's the truth. Europe heavily relies on the United States for air defense supplies, especially the Patriot and THAAD systems. That's the truth. And there's also the issue of societies, right? We see Europe heading towards an economic crisis. I don't know if these societies will accept a military involvement of this magnitude. I've said in various forums that I've attended that NATO won't make it. If it really wants to take on the commitments it's proposing, it won't manage with just 5% of the GDP budget. It will have to allocate a larger budget. In short, Europe wants to be a protagonist, but is it prepared?
Enfim, a Europa quer ser protagonista, mas ela está preparada? Então comente abaixo o que você acha, se ela vai conseguir se impor.
So comment below what you think, if she will be able to assert herself, if she will depend on the shadow of the United States, if France, England, Germany, or Turkey would be willing to send troops to Ukraine. It's very important to know your opinion. So that was our video for today. Help our channel, comment, share, give your like. If you can send a super sticker or super chat, it helps our growth. There's also Pix, which is here in the description, that helps our channel a lot, bypassing YouTube's restrictions. And we'll be back shortly, always with responsibility and commitment. Stay in Brazil, folks. See you later.
Fé no Brasil, pessoal. Até mais. Bom, gente, na nossa lista de desejos que se encontra aqui na descrição do...
Well, folks, in our wish list found in the video description, you'll find many books about the war in Ukraine. And I remind you that books delivered by Amazon's delivery system arrive quite quickly. But if you're from the generation that prefers a Kindle book, you can download it instantly. The prices are very good, the topics are quite up to date, and they will give you a very clear picture of what's happening in the war in Ukraine. And I remind you that every time you buy books and other items on Amazon, you are supporting the Arte da Guerra channel.
outros itens na Amazon, vocês estão ajudando o canal Arte da Guerra.
Adriana Zanato,